Nigeria has witnessed some of the worst brutal cases of violations of freedom of expression and civil liberties, especially under this Buhari regime. We find cases where perceived critics and opponents of the government have been arrested, detained, ill-treated, and subjected to other forms of harassment and intimidation. Uh, from your perspective, where do you hope that this will head in terms of direction for the revolutionary movement in this country?
Yeah, it's really a danger to the corporate existence of this country as we know it. If we continue, if the government continues with this growing tradition of repressing opposing views, we cannot have the level of crisis we are having in this country now. And anybody, less a so-called democratic government, we expect that people will just keep quiet. Insecurity has never been so widespread as we're having it now. And the insecurity we are talking about is self-inflicted by the political elites. They were the ones that recruit the talks and harm them to rig election and muscle political opposition. After elections, they can't get back their arms again, and these people start to terrorize the country. And the situation is compounded by their anti-people and anti-development policies. We have had a situation where Nigeria has actually undergone a situation of deindustrialization in the past 20 years. A lot of industries have actually closed down because of the horrible physical economy policies that this government has implemented. Not only this government, but even the previous ones since 1999, that we had the so-called transition to civilian, so-called democratic governance. So we've had an economic system that has progressively destroyed the productive base of the Nigerian economy and privatized it into the hands of few people. The only achievement of the economic policy since 1999 we have produced a few billionaires in dollars, while Nigeria has become the country with the highest number of poor people in the world. And mind you, Nigerian 200 million people is only a little fraction of India's 1.4 billion people. So if we are having more poor people than India, than China, then it shows the depth of our crisis. The educational sector has been pulverized and destroyed through systematic underfunding because they have also tried to privatize education. But what do we have? The public education system has crumbled. But the private sector is not proving to be an alternative. As a matter of fact, the private schools are becoming the grooming ground where children and young people actually socialize into culture of corruption. Because these schools are in competition with each other. They want their children to pass public exams. And so what do? They actually encourage teachers to teach their children during public exams. They actually organize mass exam leakages and all of that. So children are socialized into a culture of corruption. That is what privatization of education has done. It imperils the future of this country because of the damage it is doing to the psyche of our children and young people. And no wonder we're having a whole generation of young people whose values are so antisocial. So on the health sector, we all can see, even the president does not deem it necessary. The Buhari government has been government for 6 years now. Even if there were to be no hospital at all in Nigeria, we expect that was more than enough time to at least build an hospital that will be patronized by the president. But the president jets off every now and then for the treatment of his own personal ailments, while Nigerians have no hospital to go. As we are speaking now, the president is outside the country on medical tourism, while medical doctors are on strike because of neglect, because of underfunding of the healthcare sector. We can go on and on. The comatose infrastructure, which is also damaging the productive base of the country and making even the so-called private sector to function optimally. So this is the situation that is compounding the general state of insecurity that the politicians are inflicted by harming some youth. And particularly under the Buhari government, we have also had a situation of extreme nepotism. What people can clearly see as a one-sided response of the government to what is perceived as threat to security. Government is perceived as treating Boko Haram terrorists, for instance, with kid gloves because captured terrorists are being rehabilitated at public expense, sometimes reabsorbed into the army, and it has been also proven that some of these reabsorbed former terrorists are the ones even selling out the Nigerian army during their encounters with Boko Haram, making the so-called war on terrorism more and more difficult. The same government that can adopt the attitude to terrorists who are responsible for the complete destruction of the economic life in the northeast part of Nigeria, of the entire region, northeast part of Nigeria, who have killed over 20,000 Nigerians, who have displaced over 2 million Nigerians, are being given this kind of kid glove treatment. Why in the south, those who come out to say this situation is not acceptable are being hounded. We have the situation where a Kanu was abducted from another country in a most lawless manner. We have a situation where an Igboho has been hounded out of the country. His house was invaded in the night. Some people were killed in the course of that. And so the message out there is that some terrorists can actually be, how do Catholics call people they want to, you know, can actually become saints. Why people who dare to say no, this situation is unacceptable, becomes the people that are hounded. I don't want to go into the story of Omoyele Sowore, we were all familiar with. What has he done? Just for saying this situation is not acceptable. We expect the government to respond through engagement and dialogue, listening to alternative views, and see how we all move the country forward. But what do we have? We've had the brutal suppression of not only the individual person of Sowore, but even the peaceful group he has tried to set up to say Nigerian youth must have a voice.
Now, considering the movement, Coalition for Revolution, for example, um, how much remains the same and how much has changed? And is there any energy or appetite for a renewed occupation and protest in the near future?
Well, the truth is that the Coalition for Revolution I see as catalyst. Um, Coalition for Revolution actually, in more intelligent societies, government will show interest in a movement like that and see how it can actually be encouraged, if not overtly. Because it is the alternative to absolute anarchy. It is either you encourage a situation whereby young people can ventilate their discontent and grievances, can canalize what they see as their, heartfelt grievances and present it in coherent and articulated manner that both government and even non-state can say, yes, we have to engage these people because they have a point. We can't continue this way. But you want to repress that kind of movement, you are asking only for anarchy. And the trajectory since 2019 has demonstrated that basic fact. The Revolution Now movement was launched August 5, 2019 and engaged in series of mass action despite the apparent repression. I remember October 1, 2019. I remember August 5, 2020. And despite the repression of August 5, 2020 protest, a few months, just a few months after the protest, a group, because we don't, like one of African revolutionary leaders, one, Amika Cabral, tell no lies, claim no easy victories. We claim no ownership of Hensa's protest. It happened on us. but we welcomed it. You see, what does it say? It says when you repress, what you might have might be a million times worse than what you are trying to repress.
Now, let me
Because
just quickly cut you up. You talked about the trajectory, a change in the trajectory.
yes,
Nigerians have expected that 2 years after, what will have expected upheavals, street protests, and other actions. But
where
we are seeing a different
yes,
trajectory from the revolutionary movement and the
where
coalition for
if you are a student of history, if you are a student of history,
And please also add that there's still any appetite for
absolutely,
future protests
that is
and
what I've just
occupating.
illustrated. It will appear that after the suppression of the revolutionary movement and agitation after the August 5 protests, that Nigerian people have been pacified. Nothing can happen again. Those people have been suffering. As in fact, by the time SARS burst out, some of the people are still in prison. Abi? But despite that, the NSAS movement happened anyway. That goes to tell you that revolution now or no revolution now, what we're having now in this country is either revolution, organized, or complete anarchy. That is the lesson. So if you are expecting a protest today to mark in fact, the what we're having today is intentional. That we should not also be too predictable all the time. So the government expect that okay, you are coming on the street again and blah blah blah. So we arrest you, we go through that ritual. So we said, okay, have a moment of introspection and meditation. What are we done right? What are we done not so right? What can we do better? So it is not a retreat. Rather, it is a necessary moment, of regrouping, and it happens even in the war, even in the most ferocious wars. Armies retreat, introspect, regroup, take out their wounded, replenish their stock, replenish their arms, strategize on how to forge ahead. So the fact that we don't have agitation on the streets today should not be mistaken for the fact that for maybe people are worn out or tired or whatever. On the contrary, I think it's actually an expected moment, you know, of introspection on how to actually forge ahead. And like I've said before, the lesson for the Nigerian state actually is to allow peaceful protest, to allow peaceful ventilation of discontent. When you disallow that in a country with this kind of situation, you are asking for explosion. And the point should be made. In the 21st century world, nobody has monopoly of violence. Boko Haram has demonstrated that half illiterate people are manufacturing IEDs. If that trend gets to the south, you can imagine. Somebody has opined that even an OND industrial chemistry you can manufacture nuclear weapon from the internet. Everything is on the internet. OND industrial chemistry can do anything. So nobody has monopoly of violence in the 21st century. The only way to go is to allow peaceful protest and to allow organized movements that government can even engage with.